Hi, my name's Keith Cooper, Northlight Images, and this is another one of my short videos looking at specific aspects of the Epson ET-18100 ecotank printer. Now I'm going to do some small videos like this looking at specific print types of things, but I will have in due course a more detailed comprehensive review of the printer. I've already looked at various aspects, but in this particular video I'm going to look at what I regard as the very best performing aspect of this printer. It's an A3 printer, so I'm going to print on a 13-inch by 19-inch paper, or A3 plus I should say. And this particular paper is a PermaJet one from the UK called Titanium Gloss 300. This is a metallic paper, and I've tested a few other metallic papers as well. I put, when I do the full review, I'll put all the links. I've tested a couple of Red River ones from the States as well, and they all perform very well. Suffice to say, this is the best economical printer of this size that I've come across for dye ink printing. There's not so much with dye inks, but what really makes it for this one, if you want to print colour photos, glossy colour photos, this is particularly good. I'm going to show an example here. Now this is an image that I took a while ago when I was testing some lighting equipment. It's an orchid flower, a clump of orchid flowers that I photographed here against a black background. You'll notice it's actually not the right aspect ratio to fit an A3 plus 13-inch by 19-inch sheet. I would normally print something like this on roll paper and maybe cut it to this shape, and trim it to this shape. But you can obviously print on larger paper. And I'm going to show printing borderless, and I'm going to be using Epson Print Layout. Now it's free software from Epson. It's very good. I'm showing the Mac version here, running on this, quite an oldish Mac, and it's exactly the same if you're using a PC. Now I've made custom profiles for all the papers I'm using in the testing here. The custom profiling process will be covered in the review, and I'll have a list of all the profiles I've got, and the profiles will be available for non-commercial use if you contact me directly. I'll make them available. I can't publicly just publish them on the website for licensing reasons for things, but if I pass them on to people, it's okay. But anyway, here's the image. It's opened in Photoshop, an old version of Photoshop, because as I regularly say, you don't need the latest Photoshop to be able to do most of the key things that you want to do in image editing. Photoshop CS6 works absolutely perfectly here and works on this particular Mac. Now I'm opening the image in Epson Print Layout, and there's the image. Now, as you see, there's black or red. That's because I've got a black border on this. If I get rid of the size adjustment, we can see that actually I've expanded the image to fit the paper. Now you can play around with Epson Print Layout in its settings, and you can change the background colours here to make sure you've got things from. I could, if I was going to do this as a print direct from Photoshop, I'd probably reshape the image, the canvas size, I'd extend it or whatever, and do the crop actually in Photoshop rather than here. But here's the image. It's going to print. I'm going to print it borderless. I've set this here, I've set it for Epson Premium Glossy paper, which is the paper you need to use for this particular paper. A3 plus, borderless, high quality. Layout setting standard, or portrait orientation, so that way up. And I've set it centering, I've centered the image, and I've set the layout to image size, so I can adjust the sliders to expand the image. Now this is quite a high resolution image, so I know that expanding it, altering it like that, is not going to cause any problems. In fact, this is still printing even with the expansion on this at this size. It's still printing at 328 pixels per inch. anything excess resolution, if it's real resolution in the image, keep it. There's no reason to reduce that number to 300 or anything special like that. I've got lots of other videos and articles looking at print resolutions, but suffice to say, for modern printers, you don't need to worry about the print resolution. There are no magic numbers to set it to give better results or anything. The image has been prepared. It's one I've printed before, so it's been prepared. It's had a degree of sharpening added to it, and the tonality is the way I want it. I've printed this before on a much bigger printer. The one thing I would say here, I'm picking my own profile, the one that I've created. So I've set use ICC profile. I've set it to pick that particular profile, which is just listed here. I've set the rendering intent on this one to perceptual, because you've got two choices, perceptual or relative colorimetric. I've set perceptual here because it looks slightly better in this preview of it. Profiles, the way I create profiles, the perceptual rendering and the relative colorimetric can give a distinctly different look to an image. Much of the time I use relative colorimetric, but sometimes an image just looks better in terms of its tonality. It's quite a subtle difference by selecting perceptual as well. So if you get the profiles that I make for this printer, do remember that you've got two options with each profile when you use it. Some images it may make no difference at all. Other images you may think you prefer one over the other, but that's a matter of taste. There is no generic rule of you should use this. It's up to you to decide which you think looks the best. So there we go. We've got everything set up here in Epson Print Layout, and it really was that simple to set up. A few sliders and things like that. The image is moved here from Photoshop by just using the Automate menu. I could have just dropped the image on top of the Epson Print Layout or opened it from within Epson Print Layout as a standalone application, so you needn't worry about not having Photoshop or anything like that. As long as you've got the image, it takes TIFF files or JPEGs, drop it into this and you should be able to print it okay. Anyway, I just need to load a sheet of paper. I've got one here. So I handle it relatively carefully because I don't want to dent it or get finger marks on it. There we go. Drops in. You can get several sheets. I could stack 10 sheets of this. That aspect of the feed is very good. What's not so good about the feed of this is that if you try heavier art papers, you will get roller marks on them. So this printer is not made for art papers, heavier paper. Brighter papers, nope. You tend to get marks on them. Heavier art papers, yeah. I've looked at in another video at lightweight art papers, such as watercolour paper and things like that, and they work really well. But there is only one matte printing setting available on this, which really gives the game away that Epson do not intend this for much more than producing, I say much more than, it does it very well, much more than producing glossy colour prints. But if you want glossy colour prints, you've got the ink tank printer here, so ink costs are going to be relatively low. You could load this up with a stack of paper and just run out your prints. It'll take a while. Now, I have to manually open the tray here. We don't get the motorized option on this one, but there we go. Everything is set up, paper's loaded, printer's okay. I hadn't used the printer for a few days, so I did just run a test print through it, piece of plain paper, ran the nozzle check. Unfortunately, there's no displays or anything here. You just get some buttons, so I run that from the computer itself. But all I have to do now is just click on print. Now it'll take a moment or two because I said this is quite an oldish laptop, but it will download this and we should get some whirring noises from the printer in a moment or two. And it's starting. Well, this will take a few minutes, so we'll come back to it in a moment. And here comes the print. Now, this is supposed to be a borderless print. And right up front, I can see about a millimetre or two of border on this print. So this is not going to be a properly borderless print. I would need to trim this with the guillotine. I've got a roller guillotine which will easily trim off a millimetre or two edging here. But that's not really what we want. I wanted a borderless print. What's gone wrong? Now, Remember I said I was using the sliders here to adjust it and fill in the image size to the paper. That doesn't always display correctly. And obviously in terms of print we have a slight issue of that we have a border. Now that's fair enough. I've got boxes of this, boxes of other paper and stuff. I don't particularly mind, you know, running a print like this because, yeah, it makes a point. However, if you've bought a box of this and this print is something that you want, you'd be rather annoyed at getting this. How would I fix this? Well, what we have to do is go right back to the Photoshop image here and crop that to the right aspect ratio to fit the paper. Then when it's expanded slightly for borderless, and there is an expansion option here that says do you want standard expansion or like, yeah, but by making this image the right shape to fit on this, you don't have to work it out exactly, you just need to crop it to that shape. Now because this has got a black background, I could extend the canvas size and yeah, I crop it no trouble to a 13:19 aspect ratio. That's the easiest way to crop it to fit because then you know it will. And if I print that with a bit of expansion, it should be absolutely perfect. So take care if when you're printing borderless your original image is not the same shape as the paper. This is one of those things that to me is quite obvious, aspect ratios and that, but I know from when I've been teaching printing, sometimes people have difficulty with the concept of matching aspect ratios. I mean, the worst one is sometimes when I get clients who say, well, we really like that print, or that image that you've got, can you do us a print of it? This is in my architectural photography. Can you do us a print of it? We'd like a square one. Okay, you do know that it's like a landscape image like that. So which bit do you want? As oh, there you go. I genuinely get people who see square images wanting printing in sort of landscape mode images printing square, without realizing that something has to change between the two. So take care with your aspect ratios. Now, the print quality of this, which is the key what I'm showing here, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't entirely certain this would happen, but I had a thought that it might happen. But I can already see that the print quality coming out of this is absolutely superb. The gamut of this, of the dye inks here, is somewhat less than I would get printing on a glossy paper on the big Epson P5000 here. But there is no gloss differential whatsoever. I look at this and I cannot see any sign of ink on the surface. It looks spotless. Now, because it's white, the metallic paper of the subject, that really jumps off in terms of colour as well. So it looks great. This paper at 300 gram is probably at the limit of what I can put through on the gloss setting here. And if I look very carefully, can I see any marks? I don't think I can. But that's not to say that if you've got a paper that was a bit less resilient than this one, that you might actually see some marks on it in using a thick paper. This is a photo paper printer. Now the black background here really helps, but I don't know if this will show. I mean, I can move it around so you can see the glow of it, but this just leaps off the page. This is one of the better papers for this. It's a bit on the thick side for this, so I don't know necessarily that it would work perfectly with every version of the print because there is differences in the printers. But certainly you would not be able to print this on an art paper, a 300 gram art paper or a Barita paper, because it would have issues with that. But this or one of the other metallic papers I've got, now that's a really nice looking print. The colours, the subtlety of colour from the orchids, the yellows, the purples, and the grading into the whites and other colours on that. That's just a really nice looking picture. Comes out really well. But anyway, there you have it. There is a very glossy metallic print, borderless, well, almost borderless, We can make it borderless quite easily, but I would have preferred to have it borderless coming out of the printer. A borderless print on metallic paper. Yeah, this is what this printer does really well. And as I say, there are dye-based printers and pigment printers which might have a slightly larger gamut. But certainly if I put it on pigment printers, certainly a larger gamut. Doesn't matter for this because of the colours I'm printing. And I've got no gloss difference. This is a shiny, deep black. And it works well for it. But as I say, particularly for images like this, you want to be careful because otherwise you touch them and they're going to show marks and things like that. But no, that's what this printer is good for, if you like your glossy colour prints. Anyway, hope that's of some interest. Particularly take note of the borderless printing issues. That can catch people out, and it is annoying if this happens and it's a print that you need at a particular site and you don't have a roller cutter or something like that. So I'm going to have some more short videos like this about different aspects of using the printer. Let me know if you've got any questions, because if you ask questions whilst I've got the printer here, I can test stuff because I've got lots of different papers, I've got plenty of ink, and we can just churn some stuff out and see how it performs. I'll be looking at smaller prints as well and seeing how it performs just stacking up prints in the back there, photo papers and the likes. But so thanks for watching. Please do subscribe to the channel if you found it useful, and then you keep up to date with everything that comes out. And well, thanks.